Picture this. It's a cold February evening in 2009.
Brr.
A small commuter plane is on final approach to Buffalo, New York, carrying 49 people through light snow and icing conditions. In the cockpit, two exhausted pilots are chatting casually, unaware that their airspeed is dropping dangerously low. Suddenly, a violent shaking erupts through the controls, the stick shaker, warning of an impending stall. The captain has mere seconds to respond correctly. Push forward, add power, recover. Instead, he pulls back hard. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because this is final boarding call.
Intro. Music. Intro.
Hello and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I'm your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I am Zach, not so reluctant, feeling good today. And a reminder for all of our listeners, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
I like this radio broadcaster voice you're bringing to the table today. It's kind of fun.
I'm congested. What can I say?
That's the secret. That's the whole thing.
It's been real hot here and a little windy, and I work with the shop door open all day, every day.
That's fair. It has been really hot. You've been
Not to
suffering.
mention, I've been welding again, which is extra heat, and also smells and things that will give you cancer. Eventually. Oh yeah, your daughter's been doing demon voices at me in bed. That's not fun.
I hate that so much.
Yup.
Oh, I hate that. Yuck.
And it's always prefaced with something like, he says, you gotta do that. And I'm like,
No, hate that. And on that super positive note, I'm going to transition into our sources. So we have a few, obviously the NTSB, accident report. We have an article from Aviation International News. We have an article from Defense Daily, Wikipedia, and then, of course, Zach, we have a Mayday. Air Disaster, Season 10, Episode 4, called Dead Tired.
Been there.
You ready to jump into the story? Enough chit-chat?
I would prefer to just step into it, but if you really want me to jump,
Okay.
I will do it.
February 12th, 2009. While most of America was dealing with the early months of the Great Recession, the aviation industry was facing its own challenges. Regional airlines, which are the smaller carriers that operate commuter flights, 4 major airlines, were under intense pressure to cut costs while maintaining schedules.
Isn't that the way that the rich people always want it? It's like, I need you to do more while working less.
One of these regional carriers was Colgan Air, operating flights under the Continental Connection brand. Do you remember Continental?
No.
Oh, man, I'm pretty sure Continental was purchased by United.
Oh, okay.
But before, it was its own white and blue, and they had kind of like a checkered livery on their airplanes. You didn't fly as a kid.
I didn't have my first flight until 2013.
For me, Continental is such a 90s kid memory because they were still around back then. All right, Colgan had built its business on the fee for departure model, essentially getting paid by Continental Airlines for each flight completed, regardless of how many passengers were actually on board.
I thought you were about to say regardless of how many passengers made it.
I mean, based on the theme of this podcast, no. On this particular evening, Colgan Air Flight 3407 was scheduled to fly from Newark, Liberty International Airport, to Buffalo, which is a routine 53-minute flight. Zach, super short.
Yeah, I mean, that's barely longer than the Springs to Denver.
Yeah, it's really, really short. And it does this dozens of times daily, just like the Springs to Denver flight.
There's no drink service. There's no food service. There's nothing.
No.
You just strap in. We'll be there soon.
You're on like a pretty small little plane.
Mm-hmm. You feel the bumps and rumps.
So easy. The aircraft was a Bombardier Q400, a modern turboprop designed for short-haul routes. So this is kind of the workhorse of regional air aviation. It's got twin turboprop engines, 74 seats, and it has a reputation for reliability. This specific aircraft was relatively new, having been manufactured in April 2008, and we are in February 2009. So it's a little baby. And it had just over 1,800 flight hours total.
Wow.
So,
I mean, that's not a lot of flight hours, not a very old plane. How does it already have a reputation as being such a solid plane?
this particular plane is a baby, but the Bombardier,
I thought you said they came out in 08.
Q400. No, this one was built
Okay.
in 2008. Yeah.
That makes more sense.
No. I actually have a really fun episode coming up for you that's the history of Bombardier, because it is a fascinating brand that we will not dive into on this episode, but stay tuned for more.
Well, I've got some history for you. Bombardier just makes me think of Bon Voyage. Do you know what that's from?
The phrase Bon Voyage?
No, Bon Voyage. He's a supervillain in The Incredibles. Can't believe you didn't know that.
Well, if you had left that to the audience, then our listeners, they could have guessed and gotten a sticker.
But I saw the look on your face, and if you don't know, it's not as fun for me.
All right, Zach, this is the point where our story gets concerning, because the plane is new, it's safe. So what are some of the other factors that go wrong in our stories?
Staff.
Let's talk about our flight crew. Yep. Okay. Their backgrounds are going to reveal some systemic issues, and ultimately they will prove fatal. Captain Marvin Renslow, age 47, was the pilot in command, and he had been hired by Colgan in September 2005, and he had accumulated 3,379 total flight hours. That's not
A lot.
a ton of flight hours. I mean, we hear about pilots that have 13,000.
Well, we had one episode where one had 30.
Correct.
And then we chatted with our man, Jorg Bauer. And,
Oh my gosh, yes.
yeah, like he is somewhere around 30.
Yep. I race cars with a really, really nice gentleman who's a pilot, and I did talk to him, and he is going to be a guest on the show at some point, but he has 30,000 flight hours. So one, this isn't a ton, but two, Zach, and more concerning, he had only 1,100 hours as a captain on the Q400. So he's like brand new to this plane. More troubling, investigators would later discover that Renslow had failed multiple check rides throughout his career.
What's a check ride?
A check ride is, imagine if you had to like take your driver's test every once in a while just to make sure that you were
You've
still...
just got like a teacher in there with you.
Yeah. I think it's just like checking up to make sure that you're not a danger to yourself or the people around you.
Secret shopper, that bitch.
Well, he failed, and he failed on some things that are fundamental aircraft control. And that should have been red flags. Let's talk about our first officer. First officer Rebecca Lynn Shaw was only 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She's our co-pilot. She had been hired by Colgan in January 2008 and already had 2,244 flight hours. Now, here's where the story gets very troubling. Both pilots were based at Newark, but neither of them actually lived there. So what that means is that when they check in for a day's work,
They have to fly to their base.
yes, the expectation is that they're going to start their day at Newark Airport, except they don't live in Newark Airport. So Captain Renslow lives near Tampa, Florida.
So he's got a 2.5-hour flight north to get there first.
Get this. First Officer Shaw lived near Seattle, Washington.
Oh, great. So she's got a 4-hour flight.
This means that both of these pilots were commuting across the frickin' country to get to work every day. And it's a common practice in the airline industry, but it does create serious fatigue.
Yeah, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, if they are awake to get to work that long, I know it's not this way for a regular day job, but they are awake for those hours. They should be almost documented as flight hours, not as them flying, but
I hear what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's, when I was working at UPS, if you went over shift, you weren't allowed to start until 12 full hours had lapsed. Mm-hmm. So if you didn't get off until 10 p.m., you couldn't start working the next day until 10 a.m.
Wow. That's interesting. And that was not the case in our story. And let's talk about what happened. The night before the accident, Shaw had taken a red-eye flight from Seattle to Memphis, then connected to Newark, arriving at 6:23 on February 12th. She had been traveling all night, and she was already exhausted before her workday even began. Mm-hmm. Captain Renslow's situation was just as problematic, so he had completed a 2-day trip sequence, arriving in Newark at 3:44 p.m. on February 11th. Instead of getting a hotel room, he spent the night in the Colgan's crew room at the airport, which is the equivalent of spending the night on a couch in a break room. So both pilots were observed in the crew room before their 1:30 p.m. report time on February 12th. They were already very fatigued before they even started flying, which is a recipe for disaster.
Indeedly do, buckaroo.
Really in any career, but especially in aviation, Pilots, surgeons. I feel like there are a couple jobs where you kind of need to be up and at 'em.
This is one of those ones where I'm like, oh, well, she probably, in my opinion, should have been fine, because I picture myself in my 20s of staying up until 1 in the morning, being up at 5, going to work, and then doing it all over again the next day. And it wasn't that weird. That's because we're old now.
Their original flights that day, 2 round trips between Newark and Rochester, had been canceled due to high winds. So their first and only flight of the day would be the evening departure to Buffalo. This meant that they had been sitting around the airport all day, further disrupting their sleep cycles. At 6 p.m., the dispatch release was issued for Flight 3407, showing an estimated departure time of 7:10 p.m., but weather delays at Newark pushed their actual departure to 9:18 p.m.
Jesus. So they have been just straight at it technically for 30 hours.
A long time. Yeah. And, there's something about that antsy anticipation when you're waiting at the airport and you're waiting and your flight keeps getting delayed. Mm-hmm. It always just kind of agitates me.
I am curious, and it's because we're not in the industry, but in a situation like that, how does a captain or the first officer even, how do they approach it if they did recognize, I'm too tired to make this flight? Do they just cancel the flight? Do they have people on standby?
Let's listen and find out.
Oh, my wife, she has all the information.
No, I might have some information. As the crew prepared for departure, there were already warning signs that something was wrong. The cockpit voice recorder captured First Officer Shaw saying, "I'm ready to be in the hotel room." And later, "This is one of those times that if I felt like this when I was at home, there's no way I would have come all the way out here." She was clearly feeling unwell and exhausted, but felt pressured to complete the flight rather than call in sick, which is what pilots can do if they feel like they're not well enough to fly a plane. She even mentioned that if she called in sick, she'd have to pay for her own hotel room until she felt better, a policy that penalized pilots for prioritizing safety over completing flights.
Yeah. Less than ideal situation there.
That's nuts. The flight itself started routinely. They climbed to their cruising altitude of 16,000 feet. They engaged the autopilot, and they began the 53-minute journey to Buffalo. The weather conditions included light icing, so the crew activated the aircraft's de-icing system, a routine procedure for winter flying in the Northeast, especially. I mean, my God, if you're going to run into ice, it's probably going to be in New York or roundabouts.
Don't put on the voice.
I mean, hello. During the cruise portion of the flight, the captain and first officer engaged in casual conversation, which Zach is excellent at, and I hate. I'd rather yank off a toenail than be engaged in casual conversation. This was technically allowed during cruise flight, but it established a pattern of distraction that would prove crucial later. Around 9:49 p.m., the first officer briefed the approach speeds for landing: 118 knots, which is about 136 miles per hour, for the reference landing speed, which is called VREF. Cool. And that's the target speed for touchdown. And 114 knots, which is 131 miles per hour, 131 is what normal people would say, for a go-around speed, which is the minimum speed needed if they have to abort the landing and do a go-around.
Okay.
Right, which we've had, obviously, episodes where they've had to go around.
Whoops, missed that one.
Yeah,
We're going to go for it again.
Doing it again. The captain acknowledged this information, and everything at this point, according to the voice recorder, seemed normal. But as they began their descent into Buffalo, the seeds of disaster had already been planted. The crew was tired. They were behind on their briefings, and they were about to enter the most dangerous phase of flight: approach and landing in icing conditions. Oh, let's find out what happens. Zach,
I have an inkling.
can you imagine if I was just like, and then the plane landed safely? And that's our episode for today now. As Flight 3407 began its descent toward Buffalo, the crew was cleared for an instrument approach to runway 23. The weather actually wasn't terrible. Light snow, winds.
Saying the weather outside was not frightful?
It was not. No, Zach, the weather outside was not frightful.
Wow.
It was actually a marshmallow world. It was light snow, winds from 250 degrees at 15 knots, gusting to 23 knots. So a little windy for sure, light snow, but nothing where it's like, this is terrible, we can't land here. It was winter flying conditions that required attention and professionalism, right? Two things that pilots probably should bring to the table during a landing.
You're coming up into a, town from a highway in the middle of nowhere. You got to be paying attention. Slow down. There's speed limit drops.
Boom. At 10:04 p.m., the captain began the approach briefing. This is a crucial procedure where pilots review the approach. They discuss potential hazards and they confirm their game plan for. But this briefing was interrupted by air traffic control instructions and never properly completed. Here is where we need to talk about something called the sterile cockpit rule, which I had never heard of before. Below 10,000 feet, federal regulations require pilots to focus exclusively on flying-related tasks. That means no chit-chat.
You're not friends right now?
No.
You just fly.
You are doing something that is very dangerous. That is one of the most dangerous times of flight. No personal discussions, and nothing that could distract from the critical task of getting the airplane safely on the ground that you should be worried about in that moment. The crew of Flight 3407 violated this rule almost immediately. As they descended below 10,000 feet, They continued chatting about ice accumulation on the windshield, the first officer's lack of experience with icing conditions, and other non-essential, very comforting topics. This might seem minor, but it shows a lack of professionalism that really is not going to be good for anybody. Around 10:10 p.m., the first officer made a comment that should have been a red flag. "I've never seen icing conditions, never de-iced, never experienced any of that." She was admitting to having minimal experience with the exact conditions that they were flying through. This was exactly the kind of information that should have prompted extra caution and attention to procedures.
And instead, the pilot's just like, "Oh, what's this? We're fine."
Instead, the casual conversation continued. The captain and first officer performed their required checklists, but they were clearly distracted and they were really not giving their full attention to the approach that was coming up quickly. At 10:15 p.m., as they were about 3 miles from the outer marker is a navigation beacon that marks the beginning of the final approach path. The captain began slowing the aircraft to configure for landing. He reduced power to flight idle, which is the lowest power setting where the engines are still running, and the aircraft began to slow. So we've all been in an airplane that you can feel this, right? It's usually...
Where it suddenly feels like a
Yes.
float rather than
Yeah,
flying.
and it's usually associated also with the landing gear coming down pretty quickly after that, but it almost sounds like the engines are shutting off. It's a little like,
Yeah,
whoa.
it feels like mid-air stall.
Yep. The landing gear was extended. There you go. And the first officer confirmed gear down when the airspeed was at 145 knots, which is 167 miles per hour.
So they're in the right range so far.
So far, seems like we're doing everything right, other than the idle chit-chat.
Quit talking. Go sit in the hall.
We're not friends. The captain then called for flaps to be set to 15 degrees, perfect, and requested the before landing checklist. But here is where things start to get confusing. The flight data recorder shows the flaps were only extended to 10 degrees, not the 15 degrees requested. The Q400 is equipped with a system called the ref speed switch, which can be set to either normal or increase. So those are your options for this switch. When it's set to increase, which is used for icing conditions, it raises all the speed references by 15 knots, providing an extra margin of safety by essentially telling the pilots to fly faster when ice might be affecting the wings.
Oh, like creating extra drag or something?
Exactly, yes. So the crew had set this switch to increase because of the icing conditions that they're flying around in, which meant that their stall warning system, also known as the stick shaker, which who doesn't love a good stick shaker reference, would activate at a higher airspeed than normal. This should have given them extra warning time if they got too slow. But here's the problem. The crew lost track of their airspeed. As they configured for landing, the airplane continued to slow. The flight data recorder shows the airspeed decreasing from 145 knots to 135 knots to 130 knots. On the primary flight display in front of both pilots, there were multiple cues telling them that they were getting too slow.
You guys are fucking up.
The low speed cue, think of this as kind of a visual warning that shows how close you are to a stall speed. It was rising toward their current airspeed. The airspeed tend vector was pointing downwards, which indicates a decrease in speed, and the airspeed numbers were even changing color to warn them.
We're in the dark yellow /
Like,
orange.
that's bad, you guys.
It's almost red.
That's not good. Both pilots missed all of these warnings.
Wide open net, they just weren't there.
They were distracted by their conversation, focused on other tasks, and simply not monitoring their airspeed properly. This is what investigators call a monitoring failure, when pilots fail to observe and respond to critical flight parameters. As one investigator would later note, there were clear and conspicuous cues of the deteriorating airspeed that were not heeded by the captain. At 10:16 p.m., the inevitable happened. The stick shaker activated. I did that in the last episode. I stick my shake at you.
I shake my stick at you.
I shake my stick at you. All right, folks, we've talked about stick shakers before, but I'm going to give a very brief explanation of what they are in case this is your first episode. Hi, welcome. The stick shaker is a stall warning system that literally violently vibrates the control column, which is the steering wheel of the aircraft, when the aircraft approaches stall speed. It's designed to get the pilot's attention through literal physical vibration and then also a distinctive rapid thumping sound that's very difficult to ignore. It is the airplane's way of screaming, "Hey, you're about to stall. Hello." Oh, Benji says hi to everybody.
Well, I figured that was the stupid Pibble.
Oh, that may have been the Pibble. He is really the star of the podcast.
Yeah.
If we ever made shirts, they would just be like Sev with holding a little suitcase. Cute. Okay. The correct response to a stick shaker is ingrained in every pilot's training. And if you are listening to this and you are a pilot, you are probably like, I know what to do. You push forward on the controls to lower the nose, add power to increase speed, and recover from the impending stall. So that should make sense to anybody, especially people that drive manual cars. I feel like that probably would make sense. But the reason that something stalls is because it doesn't have enough power to keep doing the thing that you're trying to make it do in the most basic sense. So in order to prevent something from stalling, you need to provide it with more power. In a car, typically that's downshifting. In a plane, it is pushing the nose down.
It's down diving.
It's down diving and it's speed. So we know now what to do, but Captain Renslow didn't do that. Instead, he pulled back hard on the controls. What happened, Zach?
It raised the nose and lowers the stall speed.
It's gonna
Or I guess raises the stall speed.
It's gonna raise the nose. Woof. So obviously Captain Renslow should have pushed the control column forward and added full power. As investigator Scott Warren discovered, instead of pushing forward, which is the normal response, the crew was actually pulling back. This had the effect of, as Zach accurately described, pulling the nose up, causing the airspeed to drop and tipping the aircraft into a full stall. Just like that. Boop.
Boop. That's the sound the plane made.
Oh, God. The flight data recorder captured the precise forces. Renslow applied a 37-pound pull force initially, then 41 pounds, then 90 pounds, and finally 160 pounds as he fought against the aircraft's automated recovery systems. By pulling back on the controls, and obviously with 160 pounds, he is pulling back with everything.
Yeah, he is sure this is what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's probably got a foot on the dash, pulling back with 160 pounds. Captain Renslow had done exactly the opposite of what he should have done. So instead of preventing a stall,
he created one.
The airflow over the wings separated, the aircraft lost lift, and it began to roll uncontrollably to the left. The autopilot, which had been flying the aircraft, automatically disconnected when the stick shaker activated. Suddenly, Captain Renslow was hand-flying a stalling aircraft in icing conditions at low altitude. and he was making the situation worse with every input. The aircraft rolled to 45 degrees left wing down despite the captain's attempts to control it. Then it rolled back to the right, reaching 105 degrees, which is a near inverted angle.
But that is one wing all the way up, one wing all the way down, a little past.
I mean, yeah, I think pilots correct me. I think the idea of inverted is any time that the, like,
so
that
anytime
is
greater than 90?
Yeah, I feel like that's...
Yeah, I mean, I suppose
Well,
so.
maybe. I don't know. Tell us, pilots.
Because if you're here, that's 90. So that would be 105. Technically, you are upside down a little bit.
Yeah. The stick pusher activated, trying to force the nose down to recover from the stall, but the captain overrode it by pulling back even harder. Woof. This poor plane is trying so hard to save itself.
Plot twist. He was doing this on purpose.
Whoa. No. The stick pusher is an automated system designed to complement the stick shaker. Nothing better than a pusher with a shaker. You know what I mean, Zach? Okay.
No, I don't. Would you explain?
When the aircraft actually enters a stall, the stick pusher physically pushes the control column forward to lower the nose and break the stall. It is essentially the airplane trying desperately to save itself when the pilots don't respond correctly to the warning. Throughout this entire sequence, First Officer Shaw was making the situation worse. She retracted the flaps to 0 degrees, which eliminated what little lift the wings were still generating. She also suggested raising the landing gear, which the captain approved. So I guess in the middle of this whole thing, the plane's upside down, and they're like, the landing gear.
That's what it was.
What? The aircraft was now in a deep stall. It was rolling violently from side to side, with both pilots making control inputs that were deepening the crisis rather than resolving it. The stick pusher activated 3 times, each time trying to push the nose down to recover, and each time the captain overrode it with more force. As the aircraft pitched and rolled violently, the first officer asked, "Should I put the gear up?" The captain responded, "Gear up!" But by this point, it was far too late. That's not your problem, honey.
They were already low altitude. How much altitude could they have left?
We're going to find out here, Zach. The final moments were captured on the cockpit voice recorder. As the aircraft entered its final dive, Captain Renslow was heard saying an expletive and making grunting sounds as he fought the controls. In the last seconds, as the aircraft plummeted towards the ground, he said simply that they were going down. At 10:17 p.m., Flight 3407 slammed into a house. Yeah.
Hopefully they were out to dinner.
Gosh, yeah. It was in Clarence Center, New York, about 5 miles from the airport that they were trying to land at. The aircraft hit the ground in a nearly vertical descent, traveling at over 115 miles per hour. The impact destroyed the house and killed its owner, which is, like, just insane to me. Maybe what's more insane is that his wife Karen and his daughter Jill barely escaped with their lives, but they somehow survived a plane crashing into their house. All 49 people aboard the aircraft perished. 45 passengers, 2 pilots, and 2 flight attendants. The post-crash fire consumed most of the wreckage, but the black box survived to tell the story of the final fatal 25 seconds. Among the victims were some notable individuals. Beverly Eckert, a 9/11 widow who had become a prominent advocate for aviation safety. Alison DeForce, a human rights investigator and expert on the Rwanda genocide. And jazz musicians Gary Newood and Colman Millet, who were traveling to perform with the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. But beyond the individual tragedies, this crash would expose some systematic problems in the regional airline industry that had been building for years. The National Transportation Safety Board launched its investigation immediately, sending a team of 14 investigators to this crash site. First, let's talk about the aircraft itself. Investigators quickly determined that there was nothing wrong with the Q400. Engines, normal. Flight controls, working great. Aircraft, good. And also the minimal ice accumulation on the wings, that was not the issue either. So it was not mechanical, it was not the weather. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder were recovered intact, providing investigators with a complete picture of what had happened. But it was the analysis of this data that revealed the most disturbing aspects of the accident. Investigators faced a very unusual problem. The wreckage was hopelessly jumbled together with human remains and debris from a house that had burned all night long. Everything had burned and settled into the basement of this house, creating about 10 feet of debris that had to be carefully excavated.
Extrapolated.
They received help from graduate students in forensic anthropology who separated human remains from aircraft debris, freeing up investigators to focus on technical aspects of the investigation. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder were recovered from the tail section, and that is really going to be the key pieces here. So, as we said before, it was not mechanical. It was not the weather.
What could it be?
Our investigator, Scott Warren, he found something very surprising when he looked at the flight data. The aircraft was flying as if it had only a relatively small, very manageable amount of ice. And why this matters is because the crew had activated the reference speed switch for icing conditions. This unique feature of the Q400 raises all the stall warning speeds. It does all the stuff that we talked about. It was in the increased position, meaning that the stick shaker activated at 131 knots instead of 116, giving the crew an extra 20 knot safety margin. So why the hell did this thing go down? Like, they had basically safety floaties on. The real question here is, why did Captain Renslow pull back on the controls instead of pushing forward?
Because he had the EPs.
The investigation revealed that Renslow had a history of struggling with basic aircraft control and stall recovery techniques, specifically. His training records showed multiple failures on check rides, including problems with instrument flying and aircraft handling. He had never experienced a full stall with stick pusher activation in training. Company training included approach to stall exercises designed to be recovered without altitude loss to meet check ride standards. So, that would be like you getting your license without ever having to practice parallel parking, and then you go to New York, and you're like, oh shit, I can't park anywhere because I have no idea how to parallel park.
We got our licenses at a similar time. I know that you didn't have to parallel park to pass your test.
I didn't, but I knew how to parallel park, let me tell you.
You and me both.
Yeah. I mean, my mom is an East Coast lady, and let me tell you, she can parallel park a bus.
I can parallel park a truck, a trailer.
That's fair.
Actually, your mom laughed at it one day when she saw me do it.
Well, because company training doesn't include the training to do this, it may have conditioned pilots to avoid altitude loss at all costs, even when altitude loss was necessary for stall recovery. Just like if you don't know how to parallel park, you'll just keep driving around because you're scared to park the car. First Officer Shaw's decision to retract the flaps during the stall was equally problematic, removing lift when the aircraft desperately needed it. The investigation exposed systemic issues within Colgan Air and the regional airline industry in general. The investigation revealed the extent of the fatigue problem. through NTSB investigator Evan Burns' investigation work, tracking the pilot's movements. So he literally does like real detective work. You know, he's like,
when did he get here?
That's yeah, like old school, like we gotta trace his steps back 72 hours. And they do, and it's really scary. Shaw had commuted overnight from Seattle, and Renslow had slept on a couch in the crew lounge against company rules because neither could afford housing near Newark. As one investigator put it, her job was to watch the airspeed. Her job was to watch the instrument panel. And my view was she was fatigued to the point where that's where she was. And he just was not capable. He should not have been flying an airplane. Oh, no, it's not funny, but it's really dumb. The business model created perverse incentives. The fee for departure system paid airlines per completed flight, right? Pressuring crews to operate regardless of their fitness. Previous employees weren't required to disclose training failures, allowing pilots to hide performance problems by switching airlines. Of the 7 fatal passenger jet accidents in the U.S. over the previous decade, 5 involved regional airlines. When the NTSB revealed its final report on February 2nd, 2010, it issued a rare call to action demanding immediate industry-wide changes. The problem cause was captain inappropriate response to the activation of the stick shaker. So that's what was written down in the report. Mm-hmm. The board made 46 safety recommendations. Gee. They wrote a book, essentially saying that the problems were too serious to wait for normal regulatory processes. The stage was set for comprehensive aviation safety reforms. And let's talk about them.
I just can't get over how much this is like Dr. Death. They're just like, oh, well, we didn't have to talk about his failures. He could just go somewhere else, and it didn't matter.
It's crazy, right? Yeah, not our problem anymore. Boop.
Like, he's gone. It's fine.
It's fine. What's the worst that could happen? He crashed a plane into a house.
With people in it and in the plane.
It's crazy. In the aftermath of the crash, the families of Flight 3407 victims did something unprecedented. They organized into one of the most effective safety lobbying groups in aviation history.
Ooh.
Led by people like John Kausner, whose daughter Ellie was killed in the crash. They refused to let their loved ones' deaths become just another statistic. As Kausner put it, it's a tragedy that should not have happened, that was foreseeable, was preventable, and it's repeatable if we do not do something about it. I'm focused and determined to change what exists and not have another dad sitting here.
Well, God bless that man. Being a girl dad will really change things about you.
Oh, I think being a dad in general, but yeah, I mean, you know, Arya is your world. I just can't even imagine what this dad's going through. The families organized, and they lobbied Congress relentlessly, and they demanded specific regulatory changes. And their efforts paid off when President Obama signed the Airline Safety and Federal Aviation Administration Extension Act of 2010, which, woof, what a mouthful. But it was the most sweeping aviation safety reform in decades. The key changes included 1, the 1,500-hour rule requiring all airline pilots to hold airline transport pilot certificates, right?
Yep.
Yeah. New science-based fatigue regulations. Huh?
How does the body react with no sleep?
Badly. Revolutionary stall training emphasizing proper recovery techniques. Like we always say,
Push forward.
Train the pilots to do the things. The pilot records database preventing pilots from hiding training failure. So no doctor death. enhanced transparency requirements, and mandatory safety management systems, creating proactive safety programs. So that's a lot of stuff, but basically what it means is that all of the conditions that were in place that caused this crash, they went through one by one and they were like, fix. However, the reform sparked controversy. Some people were not happy. The 1,500-hour rule created pilot recruitment challenges and reduced service to smaller communities. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if somebody can't get an entry-level job
without experience,
how does one get the experience? Yeah. So that's basically what the pilots were arguing. Industry groups lobby for modification, citing European airlines operating safely with lower requirements. But Flight 3407 families oppose any weakening of the standards. And Zach, that's our story for today.
I'm glad Dr. Death is no longer flying planes. It's pretty absurd. I mean, having that many failed trainings that are just common sense.
So you, listener, friend, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. But, tell us how you're feeling, what you're vibing with. On Spotify now, you can leave comments on podcasts. That's pretty cool. So go ahead and do that. I get notifications, and I love it. So write us a little message. And finally, join us next time when we will be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination.
Goodbye.
Hi. Beautiful harmony.